Counter-Strike has always had a ton of weapons for players to choose from. Arguably too many, to the point where nobody really uses most of them. In CSGO, you had to be discerning about which weapons to include in your loadout, which meant that some were just always left out. But CS2 has attempted to change all of that. Guns that were previously pushed to the side are now available to use in your arsenal.
Players now create a loadout of weapons to bring into the match. 5 pistols, 5 mid-tier weapons, and 5 rifles. This means that for the first time ever, you can equip the M4A4 and the M4A1S in the same match.
Then, some other pistols, what I want to have, a Desert Eagle of course. Now the question is, can I equip R8 and Desert Eagle at the same time? Yes, we can.
But has CS2's weapon loadout system improved the game in a way that Valve hoped, or are certain weapons still being left behind? And is this new approach actually hurting the game? All right, so before we get into CS2's loadout system, I want to remind you all that we have merch. Head to shop.thescore.com to check it out. Okay, so CS2 has changed Counter-Strike in a number of ways. Some good, some not so good. But back when the game first launched, one of the most exciting new features was the loadout system. In CSGO, you had to pick a different weapon for each section of your loadout. Based on your playstyle or your role within your team, you'd select certain guns to help you get through any scenario you might face. The problem was that players had to choose between some crucial weapons like the M4A4 and the M4A1S. You couldn't equip both of them, and because of this, certain guns rarely saw use. And if they did, it was usually for the memes.
Yeah, oh my god, double kill! Triple! Oh my god!
But in CS2, you get to pick 5 pistols, 5 mid-tier weapons, and 5 rifles, which is a pretty big deal. Most notably, you can now equip both the M4A1S and the M4A4. Or if you're a weirdo, you can equip an R8 alongside your Deagle. This is something that players begged for years. Nobody wanted to be restricted to one of these guns for an entire match. And giving players the option to equip both in their loadout would provide more versatility in different situations. The M4A4 was great for taking down targets from close to mid-range, while the M4A1S excelled at long-range engagements due to its increased accuracy. The argument in favor of using both grew even stronger as the A4 and A1S started seeing pretty similar use near the end of CSGO's lifespan. We even made a video about the A1S specifically in late 2022, after it started seeing more and more play. But as I said at the start, CSGO had arguably too many weapons to choose from. Some of them, like the M249, were literally never used. And if they ever were, it was either the result of a misclick or some BM.
And what did Pyth just buy? Is that that must have been a mistake. He just bought the M249. I don't even understand. I just want to see. We have to see this. Just Carrigan with the AWP, and here we go. Pyth. They are going to smoke out and flash out. He's going to run out with his back turned down to 1 HP. It's going to fall to his death.
And although underutilized weapons like the M249 were just never seen in pro play, Valve couldn't just up and remove them from the game. A big reason for that was that plenty of players had loads of skins for them, and everyone wanted those skins to transfer over to the new game. So when trailers for CS2 started rolling out, and Valve unveiled their new loadout system, players were pumped to jump into the limited test.
It's cool. This is way more like modern. Like this style of loadouts is way more modern. This is cool. So I could be like, you know what? I don't want dualies. I'm going to put on a CZ and a Tech 9. That's neat.
CS2 seriously streamlined the weapon loadout system and made it way more digestible for newer players. Now you could just pick and choose whatever guns you wanted to use throughout a match. In-game, Valve also removed the old buy wheel that allowed you to click on each category of gun and replaced it with a Valorant-esque menu that shows you all your guns at once. To the OGs, it might even remind you of the CS 1.6 buy menu. But most importantly, you could finally refund weapons if you accidentally purchased the wrong one. But these new features weren't just interesting because they made CS2 more accessible for new players. They were interesting because they had the potential to change Counter-Strike completely.
can choose up to 5 of each class to bring into a game. Say, for example, now I have the MP9, but the game went shit and I realized I don't like the MP9. Then I can change it out for example, a UMP, and then in the next match, I'll be able to buy the UMP, but not the MP9. Of course, this also brings some interesting new features to CS. I can actually have both of the M4s, an M4A1S and the M4A4. Same for pistols. I can now have a Desert Eagle, but if I want to, I could also equip an R8 revolver. So you have more customizability with your loadout, but you're also restricted by the fact that you can only bring 5 of each type.
Also just preparing for CS2, you know? Definitely gonna have A4 and silencer in the loadout. I think when you're CT, you're playing against like anti-ecos, you know, they have pistols. A4 is gonna be way more superior because you have bigger chances to, you know, mow down like 5 people without armors. Silencer, less bullets. Not as big of a chance, but you can still do it.
And when CS2 officially launched, players finally got exactly what they wanted. Mainly, the ability to run both M4s. Everyone was excited that they could finally swap between the two throughout a match. But despite all of the changes to the rest of the gameplay, the gun meta remains relatively unchanged compared to CSGO's. And maybe it's because of how the categories of weapons are assembled. Over time, players have grown concerned that perhaps CS2's weapon loadout system is actually worse than its predecessors, and in some ways punishing exploration and innovation. Some believe that we'll never see situations where players suddenly discover secret overpowered weapons like what happened with the AUG back in 2019, because each player's arsenal is just so limited now. And in CS2, the lack of variety feels particularly bad when it comes to mid-tier weapons.
Shotguns, SMGs, and heavy weapons have now all been combined into the same category, which means there's 11 different weapons in this category, but you can only equip 5. So if you want a shotgun, are you sure you want to take a shotgun instead of, for example, an MP7 or an MP9? Well, you don't know. I think this mid-tier class is going to be where most of the customization is.
Now, you could argue that CS2's loadout change primarily hurts casual players, since they're more likely to equip troll picks and purchase weaker weapons just for the fun of it. But how has this affected pro play? Has it made any real impact on the meta at the highest level? To answer that question, here's Colten to help break down some of the data. Because God knows, I need a break.
And now, the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
Hello Internet, it's your favorite nerd back again talking about Counter-Strike, but more importantly, stats. Okay, maybe your third favorite nerd? Look, I'll settle for fifth. Alright, so CS2 is still in its infancy. The game's not even 6 months old yet, and it's only had a handful of major LANs, most of which came at the end of 2023. But now that pro play has switched over to the new game, it's become clear that not much has actually changed. Despite being able to use both M4s in a single match, players have stuck with the silenced version in nearly every situation.
As we do see him make his way through, I think Glade might have done enough here. Looking for the triple kill! And he's back, baby! The in-game leader might have just guaranteed Ancient.
At the Blast Premier World Final, the M4A1S made up 19.76% of all weapon purchases, while the M4A4 only accounted for 4.9%. That is a slight improvement compared to the final big event for CSGO, where the M4A4 only made up 4.33% of all weapon purchases. But when we look at all the large events since the end of CSGO, not a big sample size, I'm aware, this change is essentially negligible. Add in some lower tier events and yep, same trend. What about the last year? At all levels, the A4 has been on a steady decline for over a year now. For comparison, the A4 is being picked at a similar rate to the Galil. Unless Valve makes some noticeable changes in CS2, this trend is likely to continue. Valve finally listened to the community and gave them the option to equip both M4s, but that really hasn't had any effect on pro play. At least not yet. When there's money and trophies on the line, players are always going to use what they feel is best. And over the past couple of years, that's pretty clearly been the silenced M4. The good thing is that if Valve ever does decide to nerf the A1S again, then the M4A4 will already be there, ready to go in your loadout. Especially since most people are ditching the FAMAS now anyways.
And that was the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
So, has CS2's loadout change worked? Yes and no. Sure, Players are opting to equip some of the weapons that they didn't have available to them in CSGO, even though they might not actually use them in the new game. But the problem still lies with the casual player base in that they're now much more limited when it comes to weapon variety. A lot of us were hoping that maybe, just maybe, CS2 might launch with a new weapon or two. Counter-Strike is a game where players have historically stuck with the same old guns over and over and rarely touched anything else. And in CS2, that lack of willingness to explore has unfortunately gotten even worse. Outside of troll picks or fringe favorites, it does sort of seem like, for the time being at least, we may just never see certain guns used in CS2. That's like my hottest CS take, actually, is that the Scout like needs a nerf. People like raise their eyebrows when I say that, but that gun it does 70 damage to the body through armor, and it costs $1,700 or whatever it is. It's insane. You don't even have to kill them. You just have to hit them in the body. They're already out of the round. What are you gonna do with an AK and 29 health?